Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune, Spencer Forsythe on the keys behind us, manning the board for us. And we are live with you guys right now to talk some Oklahoma Sooners football, some Oklahoma Sooners recruiting, some basketball news also that broke today. So there's a lot going on with Oklahoma Sooners athletics. Parker, how you doing, man?
Doing fantastic, Brandon. And it's interesting. We sit here in August, and generally, as we look at past classes, rarely, if ever, have there been this many elite players across the country committed at that point in August, or at this point in August, excuse me. But that said, I get the sense it's going to be a wild last few months of this cycle regardless. And we're beginning to see some big dominoes fall already. 5-star edge rusher Keon Keeley just decommitted from Notre Dame literally minutes before we went on air. So, man, recruiting never becomes any less interesting, even in a year like this when it seems like most everybody's trying to lock it in a lot sooner than usual.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No, I couldn't. It went dead for a second in my ear for some odd reason. Anyways, what did you say? What'd you say about it?
I was talking about how many moving parts I expect there to be down this stretch in this cycle. And even though basically, and I mentioned the Keon Keeley situation, essentially expressed that although we have seen an unnaturally high percentage of the elite players nationwide commit by this point in the year, when you compare 2022 to previous years in the world of recruiting, I still expect that we're going to have a wild few months down the stretch in this cycle.
Yeah. And I mean, look, we've already had a comment on Edric Hill announcing his commitment on August 22nd earlier today. Look, that's Bama all the way. I think it's obvious. If you've been following it, if you've been on OU Insider VIP, we've told you for about a month now that doesn't matter. It was all Bama.
Yeah, OU had one chance to stem the tide, no pun intended, if they were able to get him on campus at the end of July. For one reason or another, that didn't happen. Never really got a clear answer as to why, but regardless, that kind of felt like it sealed the deal that Edric Hill was headed to Alabama. So that's where things sit. We're still 5 days away from his commitment date. But that's a guy that Oklahoma got in the mix a little bit too late for at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah, and then you saw Texas offer Caden McDonald, which I thought was a weird offer this late in the game. That means they don't feel comfortable about where they're at with a lot of the interior defensive linemen / even exterior defensive linemen. I mean, they've struck out on Vasic. They struck out on oh my gosh, who was the kid that just went to USC?
Braylon Shelby.
Braylon Shelby. That's right. We were just talking about him too. And then obviously, well, and then look, you've got the DJ Hicks situation. They're not in it for Renaud. I mean, Texas is struggling defensive recruiting. Now, look, they've got a great class. They're going to move up to number 2 in the rankings after everything gets computed and recalculated. After the Keon Keeley, deal gets done, the decommitment gets put into everything. So I think what happens next with Peyton Bowen is going to be the interesting part. I just continue to have a feeling that by August 25th, we're going to know something. Now, let me preface this by also saying that I talked to somebody today that continues to hear that, there's people in his corner that want him to wait and see how Texas A&M does, see how Oklahoma does, see how Notre Dame does, and just kind of stick with it. And I don't know that Oklahoma waits around. I don't think they do. I think if that happens, I think 2 names are going to become prevalent with Oklahoma fans at safety recruiting, and it's going to be Conrad Hussey and it's going to be Rohan Fluellen. TCU commit. I think both those guys are going to be people that Oklahoma at least ventures around and sees, gauges the temperature of those guys and see if they can get them up on a official visit. And if that's the case, then, sometimes, waiting around on things when a school has other options, and they may not be a 5-star option, but they're good enough players that you want to put them in your class because you don't want to sit around and wait. You don't want to sit around and wait and be empty handed at the end of the day. And I can't see Venables being that way, or Brandon Hall or Jay Valai or anybody that's a part of these recruitments. I just can't see it. They're going to be aggressive and they're going to go try to find guys that fit their culture, fit their system, and they're going to make that work. And chances are, in Venables' system, those DBs turn out to be pretty good football players.
And Oklahoma has a bit of a luxury in that regard, Brandon, because when you look at who they have already committed in this class, which is 20 deep at this point in time, and you look at the players that they are trending very nicely for down the stretch, they don't have to wait on Peyton Bowen if this situation becomes more trouble than it's worth as the season gets rolling for Oklahoma, or just becomes too much for the coaching staff to handle, in addition to their day-to-day responsibilities, having to do the constant back and forth with regard to the Peyton Bowen situation. Oklahoma is in a position where, as of right now, they keep flip-flopping back and forth with LSU for the number 6 recruiting class in the land. As you look to late August, they have the opportunity to add Makari Vickers and Anthony Evans, which would presumably, other motion aside, leapfrog them into the top 5 of the 24/7 sports recruiting rankings. So it feels weird to say that a 5-star safety in Peyton Bowen would be gravy for this class. And obviously that's a guy that you would love to have one way or another. But it's not as if the Sooners have a whole lot that is riding or dying on Peyton Bowen's ultimate decision. They'd love to have him, but you know what? At the end of the day, if he doesn't end up a Sooner, Oklahoma's got one heck of a class any way you slice it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even if that doesn't happen, you're still looking at a potential points of 300 possibly at the end of the day. And if that happens, that's by far the biggest and best class that Oklahoma's put together. And as far as I can remember, and that's before the transfer portal guys get added to the equation. And when that happens, you could be looking at 320, 325, which is also kind of on the, I believe it was like 330 something last year for Texas A&M. So you're up there in that territory of some of the greatest put together classes of all time. And I think you're going to see that over and over and over as they tweak how they do transfer portal stuff and the rankings and all that. Like, it's never going to be real cut and dry. So I think you're going to see people have some of the greatest classes of all time with transfer portal and added to the equation for years to come. And I think that only adds to the intrigue of the recruiting and transfer portal coverage that we do, because I think fans get into that type of stuff, and everybody wants to have the greatest of all time of anything. So I'm not saying Oklahoma's going to have that. I'm just saying that puts you in that territory when that happens, that you can be, in that realm if you get some really good transfers. Fall camp, I mean, that's going on, and it's been they've had a scrimmage. We put notes up on VIP notes up on that on OU Insider VIP, lots of notes actually. A name that gets talked about a lot, or hasn't been talked about a lot across, Twitter or anything like that, but who's had a really good fall camps, and he had a really good summer from June to August, working out and stuff like that. After he showed up in June, he was kind of a late arrival. Went to a private school, didn't allow, early enrollees or anything like that. But freshman running back Gavin Sawchuk has come in and just been on a tear. He's kind of dinged up right now, pulled hammy a little bit, kind of tight. So he's been in and out a little bit the last few days, but he put on a really good show during the scrimmage, really turned some heads from what I was told. And prior to that, had some of the best practices. And outside of Gentry Williams, he's had some of the fastest times, or ran the fastest out of anybody that they do the little GPS stuff that they have on their chest and their ankles and everything like that he calculates all that type of stuff. So he's had a really good fall camp, which kind of adds to when I asked Brent Venables what he thought about Gavin Sawchuk, what he thought about the running back room. And he said, look, Marcus Major's been fantastic. Had some of the best practices, had some of the best scrimmages that he's had since he's been in Norman over this fall camp. Added that, Eric Gray that's the dude. That's the dude. And he's been fantastic, been consistent, been really good through fall camp. And then he went on about the freshmen and Tawi Walker and said those guys are going to get playing time. They're going to get carries, and said that position is a position of strength. And he basically was very emphatic about it when he said it. So and that it kind of leans to what I reported, a month ago, when I said there's people around there that think that this is the best running back room that DeMarco Murray has been a part of ever. And that's saying something with the talent that's been through Norman over the years. So, I mean, this could get really interesting as far as, the running back room, the carries, the touches, all that type of stuff moving forward.
And I think you have, as you've had the last couple of years, you have some questions as it pertains to the running back room heading into this season, namely, and more so than anything, how do the carries get split up between Eric Gray and Marcus Major and Sawchuk Barnes, maybe a guy like Tawi Walker or Bentavious Thompson. But I think the questions you're asking about the Sooners running back room heading into 2022 are very, very different questions than the ones that you were asking before the 2020 season and the 2021 season, especially because you go back to 2020, nobody knew who was going to end up starting week 1 for Oklahoma. And that wasn't just because of the competition that they had heading into the season with Ramondre Stevenson on the shelf between guys like Marcus Major and Seth McGowan and TJ Pledger. But it was also because you didn't know week to week who you were going to have available because of COVID-19. And so that was running back was a huge question mark until Stevenson got back in the fold midseason. You fast forward to 2021, Kennedy Brooks had an outstanding season, but heading into the season, there were some legit questions as to how he was going to look coming back from a year on the shelf. He chose to sit out the 2020 season because of concerns about COVID-19. And so you had Eric Gray waiting in the wings, and you had Kennedy Brooks returning, and those were always going to kind of be the two horses that you rode in the backfield. But beyond that, there wasn't a whole lot of depth. McGowan had been dismissed. Mikey Henderson had been dismissed. Trey Bradford pulled a flippity flop and went right back to LSU after 2 months in the system at Oklahoma. So depth was a concern heading into 2021. I think in 2022, this Oklahoma running back room is deeper than it has been in quite some time. And also top to bottom, there's just so much talent, man. And it starts with Eric Gray. And we've heard such glowing things from so many people about Eric Gray and how much progress he has made last year to this year. And he was a factor for Oklahoma last year, but he was largely overshadowed by Kennedy Brooks. Now in 2022, he gets the chance to be the guy. And he's going to have to hold off Marcus Major and Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk. And all three of those guys, potentially Walker as well, they're going to be vying for snaps. But Gray is the guy that you probably feel the most comfortable about heading into the season. And then with the knowledge that you have 3 more college-ready, game-ready scholarship guys behind him, as well as 2 walk-ons that are significantly better players than your average run-of-the-mill walk-on, you feel really good about the running back room in Norman, Oklahoma right now.
Absolutely. I mean, I think outside of the QB2, is there really a lot of questions offensively for Oklahoma right now? I don't think there really is. I mean, maybe who's going to be like the main guys in the rotation at wide receiver, but I mean, the talent and the depth there. Would you hear about Jaden Gibson? Would you hear about Nicholas Anderson, Marvin Mims, Drake Stoops, Jalil Farouk? I know I'm not thinking of Theo Weiss. I mean, there's 6 right off the bat that we're going to.
That's one of the most intriguing storylines heading into the season that I think there is across this entire roster, Brandon, is how much can Jaden Gibson and Nick Anderson upset the apple cart a little bit and stick their elbows out and force their way onto the field? Because
it sounds like quite a bit for Gibson.
Yeah. Based on what we've continued to hear about both of those guys throughout fall camp, they're going to have a legitimate shot to find their way into a slice of the action at the wide receiver position. And who knows, as we saw last year early on with guys like Danny Stutzman, you know what? If you're a true freshman and you come in and you prove you're ready, as both Jaden Gibson and Nick Anderson have, and then you take what you did in fall camp and it carries over to the season and you make the most of the opportunities that you're given in non-conference play, your role can continue to grow and grow and grow. And all of a sudden you may find yourself taking snaps away from a guy that's been there a lot longer. So I will be very curious to see whether that can happen for Jaden Gibson and or Nick Anderson.
And you want to know a guy that I didn't even mention in the one, neither did you, in the running back room, and we keep forgetting him over and over and over. And Venables made a point to bring him up when I asked about it, was Bentavious. And Bentavious Thomas has been really, really good this fall camp. And he already knows Levy's system. He's been in it. He played in it. And so there's going to be an added comfortability there for him. And I think, you know, for a walk-on guy, a guy that just kind of showed up and wanted to play for Levy again and hang out with Dylan Gabriel again, I think that is a I don't know, man. I've never seen a running back room that stacked like that in Norman in quite some time. You know, there's going to be some transfers, like, you know, that's happening. But Eric Gray's this is probably his last year. Marcus Major's going to get run. He's probably going to play quite a bit with the one. So you're looking at 2023 where he has a chance to be potentially the guy, but he's going to compete with Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk and Bentavious for that role. That's 4 deep already. Okay, now you're going to add Smothers and Caleb Hicks to the equation. Again, you're 5, 6 deep every year. And that's got to be a pretty good feeling if you're DeMarco Murray compared to where it was when he first showed up. I mean, that, like you said, that was just like he was trying to figure out what was going to go on. And even last year, it was kind of like, okay, if these 2 guys go down, what's going to happen now? Like there was talk of Brian Darby being an emergency back and Jeremiah Hall and all that type of stuff. You don't hear any talk like that now. It's like they're loaded at that position. It's super talented, and they're just going to rock with what they've got. And I think that's got to be an added, weight lifted off of DeMarco Murray's shoulders compared to when he was probably stressing over the depth at that position for the first 2 years he was in Norman. It's like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen if such and such, like the worst case scenario situation. So on the flip side, defensively, I mean, we hear positive things on the defensive line. Jalen Redmond, Jeffrey Johnson, you're hearing really good things about, Marcus Stripling, Ethan Downs, Jonah Lalua, trying to think who the other edge would be on the top of my head. Freaking Reggie Grimes. And then the crazy thing is here lately over the last 2 weeks, our Mason Thomas over and over, just keep hearing his name over and over, making plays, kind of getting some run a little bit with the first team, a little bit on passing situations and stuff like that. Like we don't know if that was just kind of, they're throwing him in there just to see what he's going to do. But the fact that his name gets brought up over and over shows you that, he's doing some work. He's doing a really good job. And talk about a late pickup in the 2022 class. That was a fantastic get by Miguel Chavis. And I think for us, that was kind of the time that we knew, okay, this guy's got the goods on the recruiting trail. And then it rolled over to 2023 with obviously Colton Vasek, and then Adibare. I mean, shoot, he's killing it. And he's a big player in the David Hicks and Derek LeBlanc situation as well. So helping Todd Bates out there. So, I mean, those two have a really good connection on the recruiting trail, helping each other out. And you got to like where everything's moving talent wise on the defensive line, at least right now. We'll talk about the other positions, but I want to talk about defensive line first.
Yeah, man, we are. If things continue to trend the way that they are trending, Farad is a guy that we'll be pulling some more seats on because And I remember talking about him a lot in the month of January in particular, when Oklahoma's pursuit of the kid was starting to ramp up. He took his official visit that month, and he didn't officially flip from Iowa State until National Signing Day. But that was the prevailing thought from mid-December on, was Oklahoma was going to get this guy. And when they offered him, and he was Miguel Chavis's first offer as a positional coach at Oklahoma, when they offered him, I remember turning on the tape and just being blown away by how this kid had flown under the radar. And no knock on Iowa State at all, but I remember having the conscious thought, how is this dude committed to Iowa State? Because he looked truly elite. There's a reason why not only Oklahoma, but programs like LSU and Miami jumped into the mix for our Mason Thomas down the stretch. The guy can get after the quarterback, man. And I mean, I saw instant flashes of Nick Bonito. And that's really what this feels like to me, is Nick Bonito all over again, all the way down to the Fort Lauderdale heritage. And so I am really, really excited to see if he can crack the field in year one, because I think he has that potential and always has from the get-go. It was, is he going to be big enough? And if you recall, that was kind of always the concern with Nick Bonito too. Even once he started producing, people were asking the question, okay, is he going to be able to sustain it? Because he is so light. He's not a big dude in comparison to what you traditionally look for at the edge position. And so if our Mason Thomas can continue to impress, and he has done nothing but impress throughout fall camp, yeah, that could be another one of these true freshmen that the Sooner staff can't help but put on the field in some capacity.
Yeah, and I was reading here, and everybody's saying they're tempering their expectations. This Mongo 5817 said, "Going to temper my expectations because we heard about Draper every fall camp either." Did we though? Did we? After you heard about him his freshman year before he blew his shoulder out, and he came in guns a-blazing. He led the team in tackles during the spring game, so there was visual proof to back up how good he was doing before the shoulders just went out on the guy. After that, you didn't hear a lot about him, at least not from what I remember. And I always thought you heard a lot about Brian Meade, and he ended up playing. You heard a lot about other linebackers, but you didn't hear a lot about Draper at that point because he was injured. So our Mason Thomas, I mean, you're talking about a guy that led to back-to-back state titles. What was it? Oh my gosh, what school did he go to down there? It wasn't
Collinsville.
Heritage. It was. No, I know Draper went to Collinsville. I'm talking about our Mason Thomas.
Oh, our Mason Thomas. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I got that twisted. He went to Cardinal Gibbons. Cardinal
Gibbons. I always say Gibson. Cardinal Gibbons. I didn't want to say that wrong. But yeah, I mean, totally back-to-back titles, blew up because of his play throughout the playoffs. Offers started rolling in. Oklahoma already they went after him like right from the get-go because of the relationship they had with him at Clemson. And it's worked out well for Oklahoma. I think that this guy has a high upside. Like you said, he's kind of a Nick Bonito type guy, not real big. I don't know that he's going to hold 250, 260 pounds. I think 240, 245 is going to kind of be his limit range at the most. So he's going to be just kind of a pin your ears back and go get him type guy off the edge. And I think that fits the aggressive style that Venables likes to run. So,
and we have officially hit pin your ears back on the fall camp bingo card.
That's right. We have. That's one of the phrases that's always said too. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the guy has a high upside. I think he's going to be a really good player, but he's going to have to compete with some really good players coming in over the next few years. Plus, we don't know what's going to happen with, Stripling's going to stay another year, or, what down ceiling's going to be, or Lua, or, Grimes. Like, there's some dudes in that position. Like, you're talking 4, 5, 6 deep at the defensive end spot, and it's really good. I was told that they go 4 deep for sure. 4 deep for sure, and they feel fantastic about those 4 guys. They think they have 4 of the best that there is at that position, talent wise. Now they got to prove it on the field, but talent wise, they feel really good about how things are looking right now. Inside, you have Jalen Redmond, Jeffrey Johnson, Isaiah Coe. Who else am I missing here?
Jordan
Help me out
Kelly.
here, man. Jordan Kelly is a name that we keep hearing over and over and over. And then obviously Ellison. I mean, you're 5, 6, 7 deep there too as well on the inside. So this D line is deep. It's talented. Experience is where the question starts to be asked, how much experience do they have? Is it enough? And I think you're going to find out weeks 1 through 3 just what these guys are capable of, because honestly, there's a very good chance that they're very, very good, but it may not happen right off the bat. I think that's something you want to wait first 3 games. Let's see how they do, see how they develop, because you're going to see the biggest jumps 1, 2, and 3. Those first 3 weeks are going to be biggest jumps. And you're going to get to see it against a Big Ten team in Nebraska on the road. And I think that's going to be the real litmus test for this defensive front. As far as linebackers go, Parker, I mean, you have Deshaun White working at the Sam a little bit. You got Uwegbu and Stutzman working interior more. They feel really good about that. And I thought it was something that was interesting. Venable said yesterday, and it was something that we thought there was a lot of depth there, but I guess when TD Roof goes down and they had some expectations for him to play and to contribute, there's some depth questions now. I mean, they may be 5 deep, but 6 deep, I think you want to be 6 deep, obviously, with 3 positions at linebacker. But when you're only 5 deep, or you feel comfortable with 5 guys, that's kind of, they want some younger guys to step up, and that's where you got to get connect. That's where, a player like Kip Lewis, a player like, trying to think of some other young guys that
Kobe McKenzie.
I mean, these guys might have to step up. They might have to play. I mean, there's some question there depth wise. They feel good about the starters, and two or 3 guys after, 2 guys after, but after that, I mean, there's some things that need to be ironed out.
No, there are, and I think you can take some solace in the fact that it really does seem like, based on everything we're hearing, Deshaun White has really taken a significant step forward, which he was one of those guys that it felt like he had kind of plateaued under the old staff, where he'd been in the mix for 3 seasons, but he hadn't tangibly gotten any better. And what I've been told is that he's been working at all positions across the linebacker group. He's even been getting some work at Cheetah, and is just proving to be not only a versatile guy, but a guy that has gotten a lot better tackling and closing in space, which has been an issue for not just Deshaun White, but Oklahoma's defense as a whole over the last couple of years. So as long as Deshaun White continues to trend in the right direction as far as his play, and you got a couple guys that you're confident in Danny Stutzman and David Ugwoegbu, guys that have played good football in the past but look ready to take that next step. And then Shane Witter in the mix as well, as a guy that's played quite a bit of football over the course of his 2 seasons in Norman to this point. You have a solid core 4 in this linebacker group. I think the hope is that Jaren Kanak morphs into your 5th option, and maybe he's somebody that forces the coaching staff's hand, and he starts to kind of like we were talking about with Jaden Gibson and Nick Anderson, kind of starts to stick out his elbows a little bit and make the coaching staff give him more and more and more snaps. But then after that, man, it doesn't feel like Kip Lewis or Kobe McKenzie are quite there yet. Jake McCoy is a guy whose name I have heard thrown around a little bit, the walk-on out of Edmond North, is somebody that's getting a little bit more run in practice as a consequence of the injury to TD Roof. But man, Brandon, I agree. As you evaluate this defense top to bottom right now, I think if there is a concern, it has to lie with the linebackers, because you don't really know how much depth and or quality depth you have in that room as of right now. And some guys are going to have to grow up pretty quick. Not only Jaren Kanak, but Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie may have to hear their numbers called a lot earlier than they were otherwise anticipating. So it's crunch time as we get down to the last couple of weeks of fall camp. And I get the sense that in these first 2 games of the season in particular, UTEP and Kent State, games that you would hope Oklahoma has well in hand by halftime, Brent Venables and Ted Roof are going to try to get those younger guys a lot of snaps over the course of the second halves of those football games to see what they truly have at their disposal in terms of the skills that a kid like Kip Lewis or Kobe McKenzie truly brings to the table, and how much they can trust those guys to give them crucial snaps once you get into the meat of the schedule and conference play.
Absolutely. Well, hey, guess what? You guys, this is by far our top show. So we want to thank you guys for being here. Nearly 600 people on, and there was 600 at one point. So can't thank you guys enough. You OU fans, man, you guys are a blessing. And we do it for you guys. We do it for you guys. We love doing it. We love answering the questions. We love getting on here and talking, and talking some Oklahoma football and recruiting. I know you guys like to know things, and we try to bring as much information as we can. We got to be generic at times, obviously, because of our OU Insider VIP stuff. But I mean, that's part of it, and we're glad to have you guys here. Yeah, let's answer some questions here, Parker. Before we do that, let's cover the defensive back part.
Yes, let's.
Obviously, we've heard. Yeah, there's been a lot going on there. I think it's fairly obvious.
Jaden Davis.
Yeah, right. I think it's fairly obvious that Billy Bowman and Key Lawrence are going to be your 2 guys starting at the safety spots, and it's fairly obvious at this point, or at least it seems obvious at this point, that Justin Harrington's probably going to be your nickel. But then, obviously the other starting corner is going to be Woody Washington. The other side is where it gets really interesting, because you've got Jaden Davis with the ones. You've got Joshua Eaton rotating with the ones. And on the Woody Washington side, you got DJ Graham rotating with Woody Washington on that side. So there's a lot going on there. There's some pretty good depth. I think they feel pretty good about several guys at that defensive back spot. And I mean, it's gotten to the point where it seems like it's going to be a position of strength at cornerback now, and they've got good depth there. Safety is where the question starts to lie. Now, we're not talking about the starters, much like the linebacker spot. There's some questions with the safety depth, and you've got, I know people are going to hate this, and I'm sorry, but the guy's going to make plays and he's going to play. Justin Broyles is going to be in the rotation as safety.
You're not allowed to speak that name, Brandon. These fans will crucify you. Right.
Heaven forbid he had a touchdown last year and an interception the last few games. Guy stinks. Right. That's what they all say. But in fact, here's the truth. Is the guy had a pretty good last half of the season last year. He's come along. It's year 6, which is crazy to say. It's year 6 for him, but it is. And the game's slowing down. He has a high expectation for himself. He's not the most athletic, but he is the smartest. And that's going to play into his hands some this year. And I know, but look, I don't think you're looking at him as a starter. It's going to be Billy Bowman. It's going to be Key Lawrence. I think your backups are going to be Justin Broyles, and I think the other one's going to be our Robert Spears Jennings.
Hello.
And I think that is how it's going to work, most likely. I think Jordan Mukes is working himself in there. He's understanding things. The game's slowing down for him, but I think he's going to need a little bit more work. So we'll see how that goes. Parker, your thoughts on that? Because I like the safety starters. I like the backups. I think they're not as athletic as a whole as the starters are. And I think the cornerbacks are just deep, athletic. They're long, they're rangy. Jaden Davis isn't the longest and tallest guy, but he's super athletic, super smart, showed flashes as a freshman and sophomore, and then kind of started deteriorating a little bit and regressing under Grinch's system. And I think he's been revived under Riley and, under Venables and Valai and Brandon Hall. I think everything's starting to ramp up for him in the understanding. So what's your thoughts on all this too?
Yeah, I want to regurgitate a thought that I had on the OU Insider VIP board just a couple of days ago, because one name that did not get mentioned in the rundown that you just gave there is Trey Morrison, the North Carolina transfer, who has 44 starts at the Power 5 level to his name. Now, back when Trey Morrison transferred to Oklahoma, back when he announced that he was going to be a Sooner in 2022, that was before anybody knew that Billy Bowman was going to take the leap that he would take in the offseason, especially physically. Jaden Davis was still an afterthought at that point. I mean, at that point in time, I would have banked on Trey Morrison being an instant plug-and-play starter for Oklahoma. Right now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And when that's the case for a guy that has started over 40 games at the Power 5 level and been arguably his team's most consistent defensive performer from the minute he stepped on the field as a true freshman, what does that say about the rest of the defensive backfield? How good must all those other guys be? And
you can say the same for CJ Colden and Kanai Walker. I mean,
exactly.
Those guys, yeah.
Exactly. Those were guys that came in and it looked like they were going to be in the thick of it for a starting gig. And I think they'll still get their opportunity. But it really does feel like to me, with that other cornerback spot, Jaden Davis is the leader in the clubhouse right now to start opposite Woody Washington, which I don't think anybody would have imagined going into fall camp. We'd be saying those words, but here we are. And it's really fun to see a guy like that experience a career revitalization in Brent Venables' scheme. But as you mentioned, Josh Eaton's getting some run with the ones. I still really like what Colden and Walker bring to the table. And you can't forget about DJ Graham. It feels to me like somebody is going to seize that other cornerback job and run away with it and never give it back. And that might be Jaden Davis. It might just as easily be somebody like Kanai Walker or Joshua Eaton.
Yep.
I don't know at this point in time. What I do know is that your top option at cornerback is Woody Washington. And that's a phenomenal top option to have because that's a guy that can go and lock down the opposition's best receiver week in, week out, regardless of who you're facing. You feel really good about your two starters at safety, I think, in Billy Bowman and Key Lawrence, especially hearing what Brent Venables had to say about Billy Bowman yesterday in his media availability when he singled out Bowman and said, look, he's probably playing better right now than anybody on the defensive side of the football for us.
That's big talk from Venables.
That is big talk. And it doesn't feel like that's empty talk from the Sooners head coach. So, and again, I think the biggest wild card in this whole ordeal is Justin Harrington, because he wasn't even on the team 5 months ago, Brandon. He was stuck in the portal vortex. And so if you'd told anybody in March that Justin Harrington was not only going to contribute for this team come the fall, but that he was probably going to start for this team come the fall, even if you presented that theory to the most casual fan, they'd have laughed you out of the room, because at that point, it didn't look like the staff was going to let Justin Harrington come back to the University of Oklahoma. So the way that he has seized his second chance and capitalized on it, made the most of it. I mean, if you're talking about an instant success story under Brent Venables, the two guys that you have to point to right now are Justin Harrington and Jaden Davis. Those are two guys that have seen their careers legitimately rebirthed under this new defensive staff. And I'm really pumped for those two guys in particular to see what they can do with these opportunities once they hit the field on September 3rd.
No, I agree. Justin Harrington is the wild card. He is the guy that could make or break like this defense in a very big way. And I'm talking like, just because Venables has always had that guy that could play, that big, rangy, fast guy that could play kind of the rover cheetah spot everywhere on the team, on the defense, and just kind of be that, Swiss Army knife for him. And that's kind of what you feel they expect out of Harrington. Now, I will say this. I talked to somebody the other day and they said, look, if he keeps this up, this dude's if he can keep this up, and they don't expect it after this year, but they said, if he keeps this up and comes back and has back-to-back good seasons, you're talking about a guy that has every opportunity to be one of those first, second, third round picks in the NFL after not even being on the team for what, 6-7 months and
Six
having
months. 6 months
beg
to the
his way
day
back.
that he was off the team.
Beg for mercy, and that's something Venables gave him, and he took it. And they said his attitude changed, everything changed for him. And when that happened, they said the light bulb just clicked, and he turned out to be exactly what we heard. I'll never forget this. After he had been on campus for like 10 days, and I get a phone call by somebody that knows Oklahoma football and was watching him every day at that point in time. And they said to me, Drumm, this guy, if he can stay healthy, he is going to be a first round draft pick. Like, they didn't expect him to last in Norman for more than a year. Well, guess what happened the very next day? He tore his ACL, and it just seemed to just avalanche on him afterwards. Just everything bad that could happen to Justin Harrington happened to him. And with that came a bad attitude. With that came dissension inside kind of the program between him and the OU program. And it just didn't fit. So when the new staff showed up and he was able to work his way back in, I think, like you said, nobody saw that. Like, this wasn't on your bingo card for fall camp that he was going to be this star player during fall camp over and over and over. And that's exactly what's happened. All right, let's get to some questions real quick, Parker. Dang, man. Somebody asked, if there was going to be a Jeremiah Hall type position where it's just going to be phased out. I kind of think it's going to be phased out.
Yeah, it will
Honestly.
be phased out. Yeah, you're probably not going to see another Jeremiah Hall at the University of Oklahoma anytime soon. That said, one guy that you can be really excited about heading into the 2022 campaign is Braden Willis, because the coaching staff is very high on that guy.
Yep.
And now he gets the opportunity to be the guy at that position after living in Lee Morris and Austin Stogner and Jeremiah Hall's shadow over the course of his career to this point in Oklahoma. He's got all the physical talent in the world. He had an NFL draft grade. Like, he could have gone pro and gotten drafted this past offseason. Chose to come back because he wanted the opportunity to be the guy. And so now that he gets that opportunity, I would expect Braden Willis to be a key cog in this passing attack for Jeff Lebby and Dylan Gabriel and the Oklahoma Sooners offense. And I'm really excited to see what that production looks like, because obviously we don't really have a frame of reference for what that production is going to look like for a tight end at the University of Oklahoma. You can look at what Lebby did at Ole Miss, and you can have you can hazard something of a guess, but Lebby isn't going to do all the exact same things that he did at Ole Miss. He's going to bring a new flavor to what he does at Oklahoma. And that has to do with suiting the offense to his personnel and continuing to tailor the offense to attack Big 12 defenses specifically. So how much does that impact Braden Willis's production? I don't know right now. I don't think anybody knows for sure, but there is a chance that that's a guy that reels in 50 or so passes this year and approaches double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah, there is, especially in, Jeff Lebby's offense. I was asked if I was going to give a shout out to Ricardo LeBlanc. What's up, man? I know you're probably watching, listening. Let's also get to chances. I guess they said chances OU gets Bowen. They said we get Bowen. I think he's speaking of Oklahoma. Chances OU gets. I think he's talking about Peyton Bowen. I'm going to say, I don't know, man. I'm honestly tired of talking about it.
You don't say.
Straight up, going to be honest with y'all. Like, I get so tired of like, I get asked that question 1,000 times a day, it feels like. Just because my relationship with the Guy program, I've been down there a few times, and I know Peyton, I know Ryan Yates, I know Jackson fairly well. I don't, he says he wants to have it done by the 25th, but that's not really set in stone. So we'll see when it gets to the 25th. I'm interested to see how this Keon Keeley. I've almost feel like there's a possibility that, and I know that they knew that Keeley was not going to be in, because I had heard that he'd been out of like the group text and stuff for a while. So who knows as far as Notre Dame goes. But I'm interested to see if he decides that he was letting Keon Keeley go and decommit, then he's going to wait a little bit and he's going to do his thing. We'll see. I don't know. I mean, I still feel like if I was a betting man, I think he ends up at Oklahoma or A&M on National Signing Day. But the longer this drags out, I mean, it just seems like Notre Dame's just clinging on and holding on and holding on and holding on. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean,
But again,
they
it
do
felt that way for a
yeah.
real long time with Keeley.
That's very true. So we'll see. I mean, that's anybody's guess. Honestly, I know that's such a cop-out answer, but it's a fact. Like, we've said everything that we know, and there's not much more we can add to that. I even talked to somebody today, and they still feel like Oklahoma's in driver's seat there, but he's got to act on it. Until he acts on it, you never know. Yates, don't know. I honestly felt like a week ago that was Oklahoma. Now it's kind of trending. Feels like maybe he's going to stick with LSU, but I don't know that he knows for sure. Honestly, I think things are moving so fast with Ryan Yates that I think he takes an official to Oklahoma before he makes a final decision. I really believe that's going to take place more so in September than in August. And I know that seems crazy, but I just feel like that's how this thing's going to play out more often than not. And that's depending on if Oklahoma wants to wait all that long and really see how long this thing can drag out. Any word on David Hicks? Parker, you and I both know that we both feel OU leads for Hicks,
We
but
do.
there's more to the story. You first reported it on Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember which day. Linebacker teammate.
Sunday night. Yeah.
Yep. Sunday night. Okay.
Yeah. So, well, the situation, to kind of riff off of that a little bit, is that you have Hicks's teammate, 3-star linebacker Alex Kilgore, who's committed to SMU, but is starting to hear more and more from Oklahoma. So I don't know what to make of that situation yet, because the Sooners already have 4 linebackers committed, a big time edge, brand new composite 5-star in PJ Adebawore. But almost like we've been talking about that happening for a while too, huh, Brandon? But you got PJ Adebawore locked up, trending very nicely for Cecilia Kana, who's going to take his official visit on October 15th. Kilgore's a guy that it just seems like from the tape, maybe he's got the potential to play either one. He could be a linebacker, could be an edge if that's what you wanted to make him into. So I don't know what to make of that situation right now. What I do know is that Kilgore and Hicks are very close, and that would sweeten the pot quite a bit for DJ Hicks if Oklahoma were to move on offering Alex Kilgore. I also know that, well, and I shouldn't say I know. I very strongly believe that if Oklahoma ever were to offer Alex Kilgore, he would flip and it would not take very long at all. So as I take stock of that situation, to me, Oklahoma has led for DJ Hicks for close to 3 weeks now, ever since he took the visit. It really seemed like coming out of that visit that he took at the end of July, OU suddenly had all the momentum, and to the point where you started to see some predictions fly in on other sites in favor of Oklahoma for DJ Hicks. So I think Oklahoma is going to continue to maintain the lead for DJ Hicks going forward. Ultimately, I think it comes down to how quickly are you trying to wrap this thing up? Because if you decided to move on Alex Kilgore, then you might be able to wrap this thing up with DJ Hicks a lot earlier than you otherwise would. But if you feel like, you know what, we feel good about our options on the defensive front, among the front 7 right now, probably don't have a spot for Alex Kilgore, that's not a move we need to make. If you're Oklahoma, then I think you still feel good about where you sit with DJ Hicks, and you can still feel confident that he's going to put pen to paper for the Sooners on signing day, regardless of whether they end up offering his teammate as well. But I know this much: DJ Hicks would love to see Alex Kilgore get that OU offer. So we will see what becomes of the situation. That's just another variable in this whole calculus, and it never seems to be an easy cut and dried recruitment when you're dealing with a 5-star player. That's just the nature of the beast, because when you are a 5-star, your phone does not quit blowing up until the minute you sign. It does not matter how solidly committed you are or whether you're committed or who you're committed to. You are constantly going to be getting hit up by this elite program and that elite program and this blue blood, that blue blood. Everybody is going to be trying to get you on board with them until you put pen to paper in December or February. So that's just the nature of the beast at this point in this DJ Hicks recruitment. It's not going to be one that is won easily for Oklahoma, but going forward, Brand, I think you and I both feel confident in asserting that OU has positioned themselves in the best spot for the 5-star defensive lineman, regardless of whether or not they decide to move on his teammate.
I agree. No, I think Oklahoma leads. I think they're in a really good spot. Now, holding on to that lead, that's a whole nother thing. So we'll see how this plays out. If he does decide to change up his date as far as an announcement goes, I think that's going to be something that works in Oklahoma's favor. I think that leans in Oklahoma's favor because they've gotten the last few visits out of him, and it's looked, everything. Steve Wiltfong talked about it on his Wiltfong whip around the other day, or yesterday actually, or today actually. Well, he recorded it yesterday, but it was put out today. He said the buzz that he's hearing right now is Oklahoma's position ahead of everybody. So, we'll see where it goes from there. I mean, the fact that Oklahoma's positioned themselves after trailing for a bit shows you just how well they're recruiting, and the relationship that Todd Bates has with that family is top tier, the best of the best. And Hicks has said it. I have the best relationship with Todd Bates. It's not even close. So I think that's working in Oklahoma's favor. We'll see how the NIL plays out. In my opinion, I don't think that they're looking for any of that. I think they're looking long-term than they are short-term. And I think that also works in Oklahoma's favor, but we'll see. We'll see. The other question does Keon Keeley's decommitment and likely move to commit to Alabama? There's also been buzz that he may visit Ohio State. There's been buzz. Somebody brought up the other day, I can't remember where it was, but somebody reported that Oklahoma was one of the teams in it. I just don't buy that at all, because last I heard is they couldn't get any traction with him. So if he does go to Alabama, does that help Oklahoma with Jordan Renaud? And I say yes. I don't know that it matters much, in my opinion, because I think Renaud's visited Oklahoma, and he's going to take another visit to Oklahoma right before he commits. And everybody's like, well, the Alabama side saying, well, he's going to take a visit to Alabama, had scheduled for Texas A&M no matter what. I don't know that I buy that. I think if he does commit to Oklahoma, I think he ends up in Dallas watching OU Texas on October 8th, since Oklahoma's hosting. Then he does go and watch to Bama to watch Alabama A&M. That's just my gut feeling in all this. That's what I've heard. I know the family would like him in Norman. It's closer. They can get there every week. They're going to be playing games in Texas quite a bit. So the travel, the away game, it all makes sense from a logistics standpoint for Renaud to play at OU. So you had his relationship with Todd Bates, his relationship with Miguel Chavis, Brent Venables, and I just think Oklahoma leads right now, and I think they're trending. That's why I have a crystal ball on for him, and so does Parker.
Yeah, with Jordan Renaud, we've known for a while, and even before, I'd say long before it became official, that this was going to be either OU or Alabama. It's had that feel since March or April, honestly. And so as Alabama continues to add defensive linemen, and I would expect that they pick up the commitment from Edric Hill next Monday, I would expect that they eventually land Keon Keeley. Yeah, that bodes well for Oklahoma's chances with Jordan Renaud, but look, at the end of the day, Alabama is never going to say no or slow down in their pursuit of a top 100 overall player. So
Right.
I think you have to acknowledge, regardless of which camp you fall in, you have to acknowledge that Oklahoma is on the precipice of scoring two pretty impressive head-to-head victories over Alabama on the recruiting trail. Not just Jordan Renaud, but Makari Vickers as well. And that's a guy that if we have talked about him over the course of this live, we've talked about him very sparsely. But that's a guy that is just, as his decision date approaches, and it's the same date as Anthony Evans, August 26th, everything continues to indicate that Makari Vickers is going to be a Sooner. And much like Renaud, it's felt since the spring as though it was either going to be OU or Bama for Vickers. And so for Oklahoma to go down to the wire against Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide and potentially come out with a huge victory in the Vickers recruitment, as well as a huge victory in the Renaud recruitment, that's a very early feather in the cap for Brent Venables and this staff in year one. And again, I'll continue to harp on it. This is way ahead of schedule, Brandon. We were looking at 2024 as the class that had the potential to be elite for OU. It's looking like this class is going to be pretty darn elite as it is in 2023.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. I think the other thing is Derek LeBlanc, you pull him out of Florida, and the fact that that wasn't something that looked like just possible until Bates got to Norman and you saw him show up that same weekend on an unofficial visit, and you were like, okay, maybe there's some legitimate interest there, and the relationship there is just so deep that it's going to be hard to beat. Then you talk to people down in Norman, they felt so good about where they stood with LeBlanc, and I think that from that point on, you kind of felt like maybe Oklahoma could pull that off. And I think you're starting to see, even with the PTSD that Oklahoma fans have with the Alabamas of the world, with Texas A&Ms of the world, with the Georgias of the world, and all these other programs that beat them out on top tier defensive players and sometimes offensive players, I think you're starting to see some confidence come out of Norman from the fan base, just in general, where they're like, shoot, we can go head to head with anybody. Come on, man. And it wasn't like that. Not even 6 months ago or 8-9 months ago when they were going through 2022 class, they're like, crap, they're losing players left and right. Now Venables saved the day, came in, picked up some good players, stayed in the top 10. That was huge. And I think the slow start to the 2023 class, people were like, oh my gosh, I don't know how they're going to be able to pull this off. July hit, like we said, and it was a better July than we even predicted. We predicted a good July, not an elite July, and that was an elite July. So I don't know. I'm never going to underestimate this staff ever again. I don't think OU fans are going to underestimate this staff again. I think you're starting to see some confidence brew, and I think that's kind of part of it on the recruiting trail. There's some confidence and arrogance on the Alabama side, the Georgia side of the world, the Clemson side of the world, the Ohio State, and your Oklahoma. You should have some arrogance on the recruiting trail. Like, these dudes, we're going to go head to head with these guys because you're Oklahoma. So we'll see how that goes down the road. I do think Oklahoma has more than 2 5-stars when this is all said and done. If I was predicting right now, I think they could end up with 3 or 4 potentially.
I think it's very realistic that they end up with 3 or 4 because
Hicks.
I mean,
you got Hicks and Bowen.
The big if that we were talking about all the way back since April or May was whether or not PJ Adebawore was going to end up getting that 5th star. And now he's gotten it even earlier than we anticipated. So now that's no longer an if. You have 2 5-stars in this class, Jackson Arnold and PJ Adebawore. I can promise you PJ is not going to lose that 5th star. If he goes anywhere over the last 4 months, he's going up. And so you have 2 5-stars locked in. Right now, Bowen is the lowest ranked 5-star. He is the last 5-star in the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. So maybe things waffle just so, and he ends up losing that 5th star and becoming a high 4-star once again. It's all semantics, but I think you are looking at 3 5-stars minimum at this point, because I would project at this time that Oklahoma ends up with DJ Hicks. And if that's the case, you have 3 guys in Hicks, Arnold, and Atabare, all of whom I believe at the end of the cycle will be top 25 players nationally. That's one heck of a haul in year one if you're Brent Venables, to say nothing of the 10 or 11 top 100 guys that you have the potential to add in addition to that. If you're looking at this thing and you're saying best case scenario for Oklahoma, they've got 6 top 100 players committed right now. That is their most in the modern recruiting era already. Now, you could realistically add to that Cecilia Kana, Jordan Renaud, Makari Vickers, Malachi Coleman, DJ Hicks, Peyton Bowen. And, I think there's a very good chance as well that Colton Vasek is a top 100 player by the end of this cycle. And I think Samuel Masigo is going to have himself a case too. So if you're talking best case scenario, absolute utopia, Oklahoma has 14 of the top 100 players in the nation. Now, do I think that happens? No. But I think they've got double digits at the end of the day. I really do.
We're close to it. And that's still impressive. No matter how you look at it, that's impressive. All right. We've been on for over an hour, guys. I want to thank you guys for showing up. There has been, I want to say 709 Oklahoma fans. I think we got up to like almost 720 at one point. Thank you guys for showing up here. That's an all-time high for us. We're also at an all-time high as far as subs go. We have skyrocketed over the last, the last 2 weeks has been ridiculous as far as subs and signups go. Thank you so much, Oklahoma fans, for doing that. We feel so blessed to be able to cover the University of Oklahoma for you guys and to bring you daily news, team notes, practice notes, recruiting notes. And we've had practice notes every day for you guys. We take pride in that. We take pride that we have people trust us, that we put stuff out that is allowable, but you guys get to benefit from that. And we love it. So thank you guys for being on there and allowing us to do that for you guys each and every day. But if you want to join us right now, it's $1 for the first month, then $9.95 afterwards. It's also 30% off. So $75 gets you 1 year. You get all 250 sites for 24/7 sports. And I think that's key to say that. And you only get just OU Insider. You don't just get Parker, me, Joey, Hayden, Brian, and whoever else is going to be on there with it. All the national guys, Steve Wiltfong, Brandon Huffman, Greg Biggins, you name it. There's a host of them, Brian Doan, Andrew Ivins. They all come on our board daily and bring you all notes. But you also get to go view Texas A&M. You get Alabama. You can go see Oklahoma State, USC. I know you guys want to see that and see how they're doing, whether it's team or recruiting, and pay attention to what they're doing. You can go visit their VIP boards as well, only for $75. So check us out. Or if you don't want to pay that much, go $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. So we hope to see you guys there. Thank you guys so much. We've done records, and we can't thank you guys enough once again. But for Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drumm. Thank you guys so much for watching this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. You guys have a blessed night.